I want to start by thanking Prime Minister Mia Mottley for inviting me to come to Barbados. I am very proud to be the first managing director to visit this part of the Caribbean and to have a chance to engage in discussions with Prime Minister Mottley, with her team, as well as with other policymakers from the Caribbean that are going to be here towards the end of this week. Why this visit is so important to us at the IMF? Because, as we all know, the world is faced with tremendous challenges, and they are hitting Barbados and other countries in the Caribbean hard. We had the pandemic impacting tourism-dependent economies dramatically, and now we have a crisis on top of a crisis with the war in Ukraine pushing energy and food prices up, with inflation threatening the incomes of people, with the economies still struggling to fully recover from the pandemic. It is so important that we all do our best to support the countries and the people here. I want to say three things to this wonderful host in Barbados. First, we do need to build resilience not only to the shocks today, but to shocks to come. And climate change is already a tremendous risk to the well-being of nations in the Caribbean. And I want to praise Prime Minister Mottley for being a champion for taking action now to prevent further suffering. Two, the most important contribution we at the IMF can make is to help countries build resilience to these future shocks. And that is so important here, and it is so impressive, the resilience of the people of the Caribbean. It is amazing, and I want to learn more from you so we can pass it to others. And three, we at the IMF are steadfast partners of the Caribbean. We have worked with Barbados over the last years to build also economic resilience, and it paid off when the pandemic hit. The country was much better protected. We want to build on that experience for the future and expand it in the area of climate action. We now have a new instrument that Prime Minister Mottley has a personal contribution to putting it in place. It is called Resilience and Sustainability Trust. The first time the IMF offers our members long-term maturity, long-term grace period, so money can be invested in transforming the economies to be stronger for the future. What is the news for the people in Barbados? Prime Minister Mottley for years has been arguing that the IMF and other financial institutions should provide concessional financing on the basis of vulnerability of countries, not just income levels. And now what you have been advocating for, Prime Minister, is finally a reality. Look very much forward to our engagement. Look forward to be meeting with people here, especially young people. But first thing first, now I look forward to breathe the fresh air.
It's our distinct pleasure to welcome you here, to welcome Milan, to welcome the rest of the team. I have to say to welcome back Bert, who is now very much familiar with our territory. It means so much to have you here, because it's one thing to speak about our condition, It's another thing for you to engage and to have the human face of what it is that is at stake here. And as you said, we have seen progress with your leadership with respect to the recognition that countries don't only need access to funding on the basis of national income, but on the basis of whether they're climate vulnerable. And the response with the establishment of the Resilience and Sustainability Trust is evidence that the IMF not only has recognized the problem, but it cares enough to put an instrument in place to meet the needs of these countries that are on the front line of the climate crisis. You have confirmed, as I've said to the people of Barbados and the Caribbean, that we're facing triple crises. We face the climate crisis, the pandemic crisis, and of course now the crisis coming from the war in Ukraine that has compounded already a supply chain problem that existed before with the pandemic, but has been made absolutely worse by reason of the war. And therefore, Barbadians have been facing and reeling from the increase in fuel and the increase in food prices like persons elsewhere in the world. So that we know that we can come and must come together to see how we can continue to shield our people while at the same time reinforcing the economic fundamentals that will lead to growth, because ultimately it is only growth that will take us out of this condition.